You're fine.
You're fine.
Do you?
People are still coming in. You want a chair up here? We know. Do we need a gatekeeper? What?
Are we out already?
Yes. Bring more chairs in.
Yeah, you can grab those. Okay, chaos. I think
Handle
we're.
it.
Should we get started?
Do you want to test?
It's working. Yeah, it's working. I don't know if this is, but.
Yeah, maybe just say test.
And this one. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. We're going to start in just a minute. We're just getting more chairs because we have a wonderful problem of having not enough chairs for the amount of people that have come. So if you'll just, as you were doing before I started talking, talk amongst yourselves, that would be great.
He's painting. Yeah.
Make sure nobody trips over those.
All right.
Okay, should we start?
I'm going to do a pretty short intro of the president.
Okay.
Probably these two. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. You've got your script. I've got my script. I'll just highlight the key things that are coming tomorrow.
I can do that. All right, we're gonna try to get started here. There are some random seats up here in the main part, so if you're standing in the back and you'd like a seat, there are seats up here. So if you would like to come and fill out, but there's also some chairs over here, and there's some chairs on the wings a little bit. So, and especially if you want to see captioning, you can sit. There's a couple seats in the front if you need to be able to see captioning. Thank you all for coming. And welcome. This is a wonderful turnout, and we're very, very happy to see all of you here. My name is Christy Boggs, and I'm a co-chair for the Shepard Symposium on Social Justice, along with my colleague, Michelle Jarman. And I'm just going to give you a little introduction to the symposium generally, and this specific symposium. I want to start by honoring the indigenous land upon which we stand, specifically the Arapaho Territory. And the mission of the Shepard Symposium is to promote transformative learning and engagement in the pursuit of justice. Each year, we bring together leading voices in social justice, scholars, students, community members, activists, artists, and filmmakers to support an inclusive dialogue addressing issues of social and environmental justice in interpersonal, community, and structural contexts. The symposium has deep roots in our community. 22 years ago, the Omowali and Margaret Cooney, Omowali Akantunda, and Margaret Cooney from the College of Education started the Symposium for the Eradication of Social Inequality. Their mission was to start a dialogue between faculty, staff, students, and the greater community on issues of social justice in the context of education. Just a few years later, in October of 1998, Matthew Shepard, an undergraduate student at UW, was horribly beaten and left for dead on the outskirts of Laramie. Matt was found the next morning, rushed to the hospital, but died days later as a result of his injuries. The University of Wyoming, Laramie, and communities around the country and the world were outraged that this young man had been targeted and killed for being himself, for being gay. One man, now remembered as our anonymous donor, was particularly disturbed by the brutality and senselessness of Matt Shepard's murder and established a generous gift to the University of Wyoming to endow the symposium in Matt's memory. This anonymous donor worked for many years for the Union Pacific Railroad and invested his money well. He was not a graduate of UW. He was a frugal man and sometimes lived in a small cabin on a piece of land west of Wheatland, Wyoming. He was a fan of film, Morris D., and the Southern Poverty Law Center. His first major gift to the University of Wyoming was an addition to the original Fine Arts Center. And his gift to the symposium allows his concern for social justice to continue to educate and touch us all. We remember this donor in gratitude for his courage and his compassion. 2018 marks the 20th year since Matt Shepard's death. In his memory, we also mark the spirit of activism against hate and violence that his death has inspired. Matt Shepard is remembered as being not only a UW student, but for being a social justice activist. In name, as a living reminder, In 2002, the Symposium for the Eradication of Social Inequality changed its title to bear his name as a living reminder that life is precious and meaningful. It is in his name that we work every year to build a program to continue the dialogue around issues of inequality, social justice, diversity, and change. Against a backdrop of increasingly divisive public discourse, it is more important than ever that our universities promote spaces to discuss difficult, challenging, and sometimes urgent topics of social justice. This year, the symposium will engage in the broad topic, Courageous Conversations, Breaking Silences, Transforming Hate, Resisting Violence. In this contemporary moment, we are witnessing increasingly divisive and intolerant public discourse, as well as targeted violence against marginalized groups. At the same time, courageous voices from across our society are speaking out against these forces and exposing long-hidden, damaging secrets. Through the theme of Courageous Conversations, we also invite participants to think critically and creatively about the changing face of dialogue around social justice. We ask attendees and presenters to consider who and what causes are worthy of the social justice label. And we encourage all to engage with each other in ways that challenge our judgments and assumptions about what kinds of methods of social justice advocacy are effective. The symposium features scholarship from all disciplines and welcomes participation from community members, artists, students, and anyone with a compelling story to tell.
It's delightful to see so many people here. Welcome, everyone. The symposium is well underway. We're in our second day. We had a wonderful speech last night, a full day today, and many of you have been involved with that. Thank you for being here and helping us think more about social justice and think with the Shepards. I'm going to actually introduce, I want to say a couple more things about the symposium. First, we still have 2 more days, so after today, please continue to join us. Tomorrow we have a wonderful panel. We're again inviting the Shepards to be part of that panel. They will be on a panel with Kathy Evans, who has come to us from Eastern Mennonite University, Courtney Guile. Courtney, you're out there somewhere, and I just butchered your name. I apologize. She's from South Africa, a young activist who gave us an incredible speech this afternoon, and our own Angela Jaime. They will be on a panel tomorrow. We have many concurrent sessions all day, and then we have our GSA Day on Saturday, and we encourage, this is where our high schoolers come together and their gay-straight alliances. They tell us all of the amazing work they're doing, but it's a great time for all of us to be there to support them as well. So I invite you to join us for the next couple of days. I also just want to remind everyone that as part of our social justice in action, we're really committed to accessibility and sustainability at the Shepard Symposium. So you see we have captioning, we have a lot of real-time captioning in our central ballroom and our family room. We also, and if we can do anything more for access, please let us know. We have accessible materials at our registration desk, and we are always trying to improve access. Sustainability, we try to make this event a zero waste event. We do a lot of that through having vegan meals. We have lunch, we had it today, we'll have it again tomorrow. And we have wonderful student volunteers from the Sustainability RSO who have worked with us to make this as close to a zero waste event as possible. So I want to thank all of them and thank all of you for participating in that with us. Yay! We can clap for them. So we're going to do kind of a round robin of introductions. I've actually, we decided to invite our president, Lori Nichols, to introduce the Shepards. So I'm going to, I have the honor of introducing our president. And I'm not going to make this horribly formal, but I do want to I'm going to do a little formal and a little informal. And I'm going to start with when she came to us, because that's what I like best about this story. On May 16th, so Dr. Nichols has been in South Dakota she was in South Dakota for a long time, has advanced degrees in family and consumer sciences and education from the Ohio State University. Then taught in South Dakota for a long time and became dean of their School of Family and Consumer Sciences. Then went through leadership training and moved through the ranks even there. But it was a few years ago when Dr. Nichols, on May 16th, 2016, became the 26th president of the University of Wyoming and the first woman president. And we can give a big shout out for that. And many of us who have been here in the UW community remember and are still living through the significant budget reductions. But despite this, President Nichols has effectively embraced her new role, encouraging a collaborative approach to budget reductions while keeping the university core missions at the forefront. First, she galvanized campus support to embrace change and begin developing a comprehensive strategic plan to guide the university for the next 5 years. She's very passionate about working with young people and solidifying educational and career goals and developing leadership skills. I will just say that when Dr. Nichols came to interview, many of us attended these interviews, and we asked her, I think Christy and I both asked about diversity and if that was important. And one thing that struck me is that Dr. Nichols answered that question with substance and excitement about taking on diversity issues. And since she's come to this campus, she's made tremendous strides in reaching back out to the Wind River Reservation. She has supported faculty and those of us who have advocated for this to bring in a chief diversity officer. She supports the Shepard Symposium and the work for social justice. And Dr. Nichols, it's greatly appreciated. And I'm thrilled to invite you up.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a moment and say that I so admire the work that Christy and Michelle do year in and year out, just enduring work on this. Would you help me and thank them so much? Well, as you heard from Christy in particular, a bit of the history of this, and I don't have a lot of history with this. This is actually only my second year with the Shepard Symposium, but I do think the history of this is fascinating in that, in fact, it did start 22 years ago with a couple of faculty who really wanted to start a conversation on this campus about social justice. And then just a couple years later, with the Matthew Shepard situation, it really took it to a completely different level. And what I think is so wonderful is that what began as really sort of a modest effort to begin a campus conversation about social justice has grown into this. Today, look at the attendance at this and just the magnitude of this conference and the various sessions that they have, which not only is a campus conference, but really has become a regional and even a national conference. And I just think that's wonderful, and I thank everybody who has worked so hard to make that happen. So I am going to pause for a minute and ask that if those people that have been a part of this planning committee, that have worked all year long to put this program together and make this happen, if you're here, would you stand up so we can recognize the whole planning committee? And to all of you, I say a very deep thank you as well, certainly led by Michelle and Christy, but many other people who have worked on this too. Well, it is my distinct honor this afternoon to introduce our keynote speakers. I was prepared to introduce one speaker, Judy, and I am delighted that I am introducing today both Judy and Dennis Shepard. They're both going to come up to the podium and speak with us today. So Judy and Dennis Shepard, as you know, were thrust into the spotlight about 20 years ago, right now, this year, in the midst of an unspeakable tragedy, the brutal murder of their son Matthew here in Laramie in 1998 shocked our campus, it shocked the community, and it certainly shocked our nation and the world. And I just have to say, I remember well, I was living in South Dakota at the time, and Judy and Dennis, as a mother of 2 daughters, I can't even imagine what that must have been like. But rather than retreating into really a life of pain and loss, which would have been so easy to do, Judy and Dennis took a different path. They turned tragedy into a passionate crusade for social justice. And for 20 years, they have been an outspoken advocate and activist for equal rights for LGBTQ people. Together, Judy and Dennis founded the Matthew Shepard Foundation to honor their son's legacy through action. Judy served as the foundation's first executive director until 2009. And in the same year, she led the effort to pass the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. I'm sure, Dennis, you were very involved in that too. The act, signed by President Obama, expanded federal hate crimes law to include crimes based on gender and sexual orientation. Judy and Dennis, thank you so much for doing that work. Will you help me and thank them for that? They impact everyone today through the work they did. Today, Judy and Dennis continue their work with the foundation. Judy, as I said, was founding president. They both serve on the board of directors. Their work takes them now all over the country and the world, and it has given them a platform to encourage others to value and defend human dignity and diversity in their own communities. They also wrote a book, The Meaning of Matthew, which reflects on how their life and their fight for equal rights changed when her son and their son was killed. The Shepards have truly made it their life's work, and in the words of the Matthew Shepard Foundation mission, they work to replace hate with understanding, compassion, and acceptance. We have all learned so much from Judy and Dennis, their courage, their empathy, and their activism. And I am really, really happy to have you back. I know everybody here is so pleased that you're back with us today so that we can hear and learn more from you. Will you all help me in welcoming to the podium and to the stage Judy and Dennis Shepard.
Thank you, President Nichols. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you for the organizers. Thank you to Christy and Michelle, all of you. It's really an honor for us to be part of this year. I'm speechless. We're gonna sort of tandem this thing. I'm going to talk for a while, then he's going to talk for a while, and then I'll poke him when he's talked too long, and then I'm going to talk for a while, and we're going to answer. We're hoping you have questions, because that's our favorite part of the program, questions. And when President Nichols, or whoever said we were in our outspoken activism, well, that's what you're going to get, is our outspoken activism. So if you're going to ask us a question, you're going to get the answer, okay? We don't hold back. We are truth tellers here. And I know a lot of you younger folks may not know Matt's story, so I'm just going to briefly tell what happened and what we have done since then. In October of 1998, following an LGBT organizational meeting on campus, Matt went to a local tavern for a drink, was befriended by 2 local young men, Matt's age, 21. They, according to their stories, pretended to be gay to befriend Matt, offered him a ride home, Once he was in their vehicle, they started to beat him, rob him. They hit him with the fist and the butt of a .357 Magnum. They drove out to the prairie. I'm not going to tell you where. They drove out to the prairie, drug Matt out of the car, tied him to a buck and rail fence on the ground, continued to beat him with the butt of a .357 Magnum, swinging it like a bat. He sustained 4 skull fractures, 18 wounds to the head and neck. The final blow hit him on the back of the skull, crushing his brainstem. He never, to our knowledge, regained consciousness, was tied to this fence for 18 hours until a mountain biker found him, thinking that he was a scarecrow tied to a fence. When he went to investigate, he saw Matt trying to breathe. He ran to the closest house, called 911. A delightful woman named Reggie Flutie turned out to be the first responder. She got Matt away from the fence, and he was transported to Ivinson and shortly after transported to Fort Collins because his injuries could not be dealt with at Ivinson. Dennis and I were living in Saudi Arabia at the time. We got a call in the middle of the night advising us that Matt's condition was critical, that his hold on life was tenuous at best. We should come home. They didn't really know how Matt had sustained his injuries exactly. They only told us he was injured. We began our trip home. 36 hours later, we were in Fort Collins, still really not knowing everything. We didn't even know that he had been attacked until we got into the States and saw the story on the front page of every newspaper that was there. It's quite jarring to think your life story now is headline news, right? That's whoever in their life expects that to be part of their future or their past. So we continued to come to Fort Collins. We spent the next few days with Matt, exclusively with Matt, mostly unaware of what was going on outside the hospital. Our efforts were to be with Matt. We had no idea the scope, the size of the story at the time. The internet was a brand new thing then, 1998, right? So it just took off like wildfire across the internet, and the hospital received so many inquiries that it crashed their server every day. Rule and Stacy, the hospital administrator, gave press updates. This is insane. Why is this even happening now? Still don't understand why Matt's story was the one that spoke to everybody, gay, straight, or whatever. But it did, and it still does. Unfortunately, it is still a relevant story because it is still happening. We felt that if we started this work as accepting parents, folks would rethink the idea of throwing away their children, which was really a very common thing, still happening, but less common now, in the 90s. As an accepting family, we hope that families who initially were not might rethink throwing away their children because they at least still had their children. I'm not sure how effective we were at that. We tried. We tried to be a voice for everyone. We have tried to make it our work not just to acknowledge the inequity and inequalities facing the gay community, but them facing all marginalized folks in this country and even in this world. This is a universal problem, not endemic only to the gay community, but it's the world that we were now a part of, Matt's world. We wanted to do anything we could to make the life of Matt's friends and his peers better. So we started the Matthew Shepard Foundation. The role of the mission has morphed into many different things over the last 20 years. We actually incorporated on Matt's birthday, December 1st, 1998. Always with the idea in mind, we just wanted to make the world a better place in whatever way we could. As accepting parents, we felt like maybe we could be an example of that you should just love your kids no matter what, that you're your kids. They are your kids. And This isn't something they just randomly decided to be, y'all. They're gay. That's who they are. So let's just get real here. And just, accept it and move on. I don't think we're quite there yet everywhere. We thought we were making such great progress, yeah? Until 2016, and the world changed, like overnight. Yeah, I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I'm trying really hard to control my anger because I know I can't teach from anger, but I'm really mad. And so my action plan is going to be, we're all going to register to vote. As students, we're going to find out whether we need to register here at home. We're going to do absentee. We're going to take our friends to register and then to actually vote. Yeah? Actually vote. So, and I'm just going to close out this little part by saying that there are fundamental flaws in our federal election laws. Fundamental flaws. Election day should be a holiday. We should either do it on the weekend or make Election Day a holiday. We should have open primaries. You should not have to vote party ticket in a primary. You just should not. That's ridiculous. That's one of the reasons, in my view, why we have such a divisive, partisan government right now. I am a Democrat, I'm sure, there's no question, you know that. But there might be a Republican candidate I want to support, but I am not allowed to do that in a Wyoming primary. I want to be able to do that. I've had friends who are Democrats who changed their party so they can get votes, because there aren't. When Dennis and I leave Wyoming, the Democratic Party's like, y'all are coming back, right? It's like, no, we're not the only ones, but maybe 12 of us, So, no, there are many of us, and we're busy, and we're talking more now because we have to. But there are changes that need to be made. Will they be made? I don't know, because why do the victors ever have to change policy? So we're just ever hopeful, and we cannot give up. And especially now, I'm angry, but I'm focusing that anger. And that's what we all need to do, is focus that anger. Matt's first political campaign was when he was 7. He hung those really annoying little pamphlets on people's doorknobs when he was 7. He understood the system, but he also understood how important it was to be part of the system. As unattractive as it is, you have to participate to make it work. It is not only your privilege, but your responsibility. If you did not vote in the election in 2016, you are the reason this is a mess. Okay? You're the reason it's a mess. So we're going to fix it in 2018, because we're going to register, and we're really going to vote. I don't know how much more to tell you about Matt personally. I will leave that up to questions later. And now I'm going to let Dennis address you. Thank you.
She's so short. I just want to look out here at all the young people and say, congratulations for being losers. You grew up under President Obama, so you won the rights to be yourself. You've now lost that right. Whether you like it or not, the Republican Party is trying to take away everything that you gained over President Obama's 2 terms. So now you have to learn to live with being a loser. And how are you going to turn yourself into winners? You can't do it by sitting on your butt and saying, gosh, I wish somebody would do something different. You are the difference. Look what the students in Parkland are doing. You have that same power. You have that same privilege. and you should not expect anybody else to do it for you. Wyoming is known as the reddest of the red states. There are 5 states that have no hate crime law whatsoever: Indiana, South Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas, and Wyoming. Georgia is now introducing a hate crime law. Indiana is discussing it. Wyoming had the chance to be the leader because the legislature met in January, right after Matt died, and they ran the other way. The statement was, every crime is a hate crime, and the current governor has said the same thing, and that is not true. If I go in and rob a bank and I shoot a bank teller and that bank teller dies, the bank tellers throughout the country are not terrified for their lives. However, if an incident like what happened to Matt, tied to a fence, beaten to death, happens, the entire LGBTQ community and those perceived to be are in fear of their lives, no matter where they are. Wyoming is complaining because uranium, coal, natural gas, and oil all collapsed at the same time. Now they're in the red, budget-wise. Now they want to diversify. You can't diversify and bring in industry unless you get the best people. How do you get the best young people if they're afraid of coming to a state that has no protections for job discrimination, where you can still be fired the day after you get married and try and put your husband or your wife on your medical? You're fired. So where is the diversification? It's up to you. To make the change. As you remember, Gore lost to Bush by 12 votes in Florida. If 13 people would have voted in Maryland, the Speaker of the House is Republican because of a tie vote. If one more person would have voted. Voting is not a right, it's a privilege. And if you don't vote, you're going to lose that privilege. Now, as Judy mentioned, Matt loved politics. He should have married Judy. Because they both love politics, the theater, movies, bad jokes. But he understood what the situation was. He didn't go out and flaunt the fact that he was gay, but he didn't back down from it either. He would meet somebody and said, before we get to know each other, I don't want to start a friendship and then lose it. I want to let you know that I'm gay. If that bothers you, so be it. We can still say hi, but we'll go our separate ways. We can't do that in this country today. If you're a Democrat, the Republicans are terrorists. And if you're a Republican, the Democrats are terrorists, and everybody thinks the independents are. We have tried to speak, especially Judy, because I was back in Saudi, around the country, to talk to young people, to let them know that it's important that you be yourself and that you respect yourself before you respect others. You have to respect yourself. And then instead of castigating somebody making fun of them because they're different. I hate to say this, but I look out here and I can't stand any of you because you're all different from me. It's sad when we start talking about that. That if you don't look alike, talk alike, think alike, pray alike, you're different and you shouldn't be here. Being gay is not a choice. Let's get that out in front and keep it there. You don't suddenly wake up and say, I want to be gay today because I want to be beaten. I want to be fired from my job. I want my place to be vandalized. And then tomorrow I'll be straight again. And then the next day I'll be gay again so I can have it happen all over again. That is not the real world. You are who you are, and that's the way it is. If you had a choice, I'd be 6'4" and better than LeBron James. Ain't gonna happen. And being gay is not a disease. You can't touch somebody and suddenly you're gay or straight. You are who you are. Now, Matt was raised, I come from a family of oil field, construction, farming. And Matt was raised hunting and fishing and camping and loving the great outdoors and riding horses. But he still had that feeling for those who had not experienced those, to me, delights. Because we all are different. We all have different experiences. We all have different feelings, different desires and goals and dreams. So instead of going up to somebody and saying, those are the ugliest shoes I've ever seen, take them off, I'm going to whip your butt, you just go up and say, those are the ugliest shoes I've ever seen. You're pretty courageous to wear them. Where can I find a pair? Get to know everybody. If these two men, they were judge, jury, and executioner because Matt was different. They didn't know Matt. They'd never seen him before. Regardless of what you hear in these conspiracy theories, they had never met him before. He was not a drug dealer. He was just a kid trying to find his way through life. He was typical college. He smoked too much. He drank too much. He didn't go to class enough. I think it's genetic. Except for the smoking part. But you're here today to learn. You're here today to learn about yourself and about others and what others are doing around the country and around the world. If you're going to be activists, shame on you if you're not. If you're going to get involved in politics, shame on you if you don't. If you're going to vote and you don't vote for yourself, shame on you twice. Why aren't you running for office? It doesn't have to be more than the city council. It can be the PTA. But get involved. Then if things happen and you complain and you were out there doing your best to make change, good for you. If you weren't out there, then keep your mouth shut and sit down and get out of the way for the people who want to make change. I'm sorry. Judy's always scared when I get up here. She's terrified because I just say what I feel. And right now, we need you young people to get out there and do something. And we need it now. Don't wait. Start now. Start now. I wish we had civics in high school. So you know what your rights are, what your privileges are, and what you need to do to keep them. We're losing those privileges and those rights if we're not careful. We don't want that. When Judy mentioned to me today, when 63% of the millennials have never heard of Auschwitz, we are in trouble. How can that be? What is it you haven't heard about the Holocaust? About taking away the rights, taking away the books, taking away the privileges, except giving them to only a few. That's what's going to happen here if you don't pay attention and do your homework and get involved. This is a father speaking, and I'm very serious. My father fought in World War II so that I could have the life I've had and his grandkids could. I didn't serve, but I'm doing what I can to make change, to preserve what we have, and to make it better. It's your job now to take over, and you better take over. Thank you.
I just want to clarify or add to one thing that Dennis said, which is about all us being different and how blessed we are because of that we all continue to learn from each other and learn from each other's experiences. But at our core, as human beings, we are all the same. We want to be loved. In return, we want to love. We want to feel safe and secure in our homes and in our surroundings. Everybody wants that. Everybody does. And why would we want to deny anybody that? Why would we want to do that? So the work that we're going to do now, all of us in this room, the conversations, the difficult conversations we have while we're here or after we leave, any of you who voted for Hillary or your family voted for Trump, you know what that is. This is the opportunity to learn from someone else. Yes, bring your views, but also bring your ears to hear. There is an adage about we have one mouth and two ears for a reason. We should be listening more than we are talking. And that's really the only way we learn what we need to do to make change and how we're going to do it. This is going to require a joint effort from all of us to make sure that every American citizen, and perhaps citizens of the world, are treated with equality and respect. So this is a wonderful opportunity for all of you to learn something else from someone you may not have ever thought you would meet ever in your life. So please take advantage of that. In regard to the voting action plan, the part of that is equally important, but also a precursor to that, is y'all have got to pay attention to what's happening. Many really horrible pieces of legislation are in Congress right now that are getting no press at all because the press is all about the Trump circus. So just, you can find information about them if you look. What I'm asking you to do is please look, to educate yourself about what these would be, because these are things that will change not only your life, but the lives of your children and grandchildren too. So you need to be aware of everything that's going on. And I know the remarks that we have made and are probably going to make the rest of the time we are up here are very partisan, but y'all, that's the world we live in right now. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. I wasn't called up here, we weren't called here to be political, but the world we are in, the world you are in and will benefit or be harmed by is the political world. So we're just asking you to pay attention, to please honor your responsibility and your privilege to vote and to pay attention. If you're from Wyoming, you know that this is like not really the same thing as paying attention and voting in like Colorado, because we don't have that many options, but we do have options. Oh. Okay, I didn't see that one coming. We don't have as many options, but we do have options. So please pay attention. I talked a little bit about Matt and what the work we're trying to do now. We talk about hate crime legislation a lot more now than I had thought we were going to prior to the election, because now it's needed even more. Dennis talked about a variety of other things. We're just going to open the floor to questions now, because we don't really know what it is you want to know from us. So let's just get started. Who's going to be the very first question asker?
She's a teacher. If you don't do a question, she's going to give you a test.
Does anyone have a question?
There's some over here.
Okay, I can't see, or, okay.
There's one right here.
Can you stand so that
yes.
everyone, thank you.
Well, thank you both for coming. My name is Jordan Ostrom, and I have the unique privilege of serving as the Gay Straight Alliance Coordinator for Wyoming Equality. So every day I get to work with young people in GSAs across the entire state. I know not all of them are here now, but is there something you feel that specifically, like the young GSA students, people like Matt, is there something in particular you feel that they need to hear?
I'll take that one. Yes, there is. You are not alone. Don't ever feel like you are alone. Wyoming is not the only place you can be as a gay person. There's a much bigger, broader world out there if you want to search for it. But I don't want you to feel like you have to leave either. 20 years ago, I think Matt felt like that when he was leaving, after he would have finished college. We just prayed that he actually would have finished college. He would have not stayed here. So then this is a horrible loss for the state of Wyoming, that so many young people leave because there's such a lack of opportunity here and equality and fairness. Just never lose sight of who you are as individuals. Don't ever let anybody else tell you who you should or shouldn't be, because in reality, when you look back, even though your high school years may feel very raw, they are but an eyelash of your life. You have every opportunity after that to make your life what you need and want it to be. So please just carry that confidence and that optimism with you, that you are you, and that's the best you can be. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity.
And something else to go with that. You tell these young people not to give up. We have so many of them around the country who give up and take their lives. And that is just a waste of potential. It's a waste of them. It doesn't solve anything. They may think it does for them, but what they're leaving behind is even greater tragedy and grief and guilt for the rest of the family. They'll get through it. As they tried that promotion 3 years ago, it gets better. And you need to emphasize that to these young people. It does get better.
Every day is a brand new day. Do we have another question? Thank you. Anywhere? Anybody?
Yes, young lady over here.
Hi, my name is Jana, and I wanted to make a statement, is that you both are beautiful parents. You stand out to me, being from Wyoming, and seeing you stand up for your children. I think that you made a huge statement throughout the world when you were on the news and supported all the gay rights and all the things. And I just would like to applaud you right now with
Thank you.
everyone, because I
Thank
think
you.
you're amazing.
Thanks. That's very kind.
And I just, as a single woman, I just want to say that I really appreciate that you guys are against hate crimes, and that children of all diversity struggle with being accepted. And I know there's a lot. I'm so glad you clarified some of the myths about Matthew. I think he seems like a beautiful man, and just changed lives. And so there are children I got to work with in the inner cities and who wear their pants down, and different cultures and different ideas about. I just wondered how you guys address maybe when children feel violated by older men that are perpetrators, or do you address gay rapes, or do you address any of that stuff as well? Because it's very silent, and a lot of people, because of social justice, they don't want to address it because it's not popular, or they feel rejection and fear.
Right.
So I really appreciate you
Thanks.
answering that.
Thank you. Was there a question in there? Well, I'm sorry, did you ask a question?
Sexual abuse in the gay community, I think, and rape.
Was that
Yeah.
it? Okay, well,
Yeah.
we actually we don't, because we are not experts in that area. If we were ever asked about it, we try, in fact, we're not counselors, we're angry parents. So our office, our foundation, we do not have counseling experience, but we are really great at referring people to where we know they need to be. Suicide prevention, information, health, whatever they need. We know where to send them, but as ourselves personally or our foundation, we would not ever tackle something that would require counseling, because we're just not part of that. We don't have that skill set. But thank you for your question. But I agree, it's very important, and important that people feel free to talk about it. I think the Me Too movement is magnificent right now. As a woman, the idea that you have been harassed but you're afraid to tell, all of us have gone through that, all of us. So now that there is because we didn't ever feel like anybody would believe us or take us or think it was a bad thing. It is a bad thing. And yeah, I could just go on and on about gender issues, but I won't. But we do not, to briefly answer your question, we do not go into things that require counseling because we just don't have that skill set. Thank you for your question.
One thing I'd like to mention that you mentioned is the issue of gay rights. There is no such thing as gay rights. Let's get that clear right now. That's a buzzword to piss off people. What we're talking about here are equal rights, not gay rights. And it's not just for the gay community. It's for anybody who's been discriminated against and doesn't have all the equal rights and protections and privileges of being a citizen or potential citizen of this country. So just to let you know, when they say that, you tell them, no, there's no such thing. They're equal rights. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello. I was wondering how the Saudi Arabians handled the angry parents.
It's quite unique. The Muslim religion does not accept homosexuality. In several countries, it's the death penalty. However, I worked for Saudi Aramco for 18 years, and they were educated in the Western world. And so they had a different idea of how the world actually worked. When we got the call at 5 in the morning on a Thursday, which their weekend at that time was Thursday and Friday, because Friday is their religious day, like our Sunday. Yeah, briefly. So we did all the paperwork, and Judy, it took us 36 hours to get home because you can't leave Saudi Arabia before midnight, because you can't land in Europe before dawn. So we had all day. I was fortunate. I was at the office getting all my people lined up because I was leaving. Had to get passports, get visas. Judy, I don't know what she did to keep herself composed. Then you have that long flight home. But they were very gracious at Saudi Aramco. They gave me all the time off I needed to be here with Matt. Then I went back, and then my father passed away due to all the stress of Matt. So they sent me back here for that situation, and they allowed me to come back for the 2 trials, the end of them. Judy sat through the trials. I sat through the final portion of it. Then when I got back, when this was all over, 2 of the Saudi vice presidents sought me out and came in my office and personally told me how sorry they were that this had happened to Matt, which is something I did not expect and still shocks me today that they were so gracious about it. Other Saudis who knew about it, they also mentioned how sorry, but a lot of them didn't know what happened, and I was happy with that too. But thank you for the question.
Hello. First off, I want to say thanks for coming. This is a really great opportunity. I've been in Laramie for about 10 years, and I haven't been able to catch you guys previously. So you were talking about learning, so I wanted to make a quick statement. Forward Wyoming is currently doing a Commit to Vote campaign. If you guys did not know, millennials are the biggest demographic in Wyoming. And so if everyone makes their voices heard, we can make a difference, especially at the local level, considering our midterm elections are coming up in November of this year. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Next thing, my question was, due to the conservative culture in Wyoming, what are some pieces of advice you might have for kids having those conversations with their parents as far as telling them that they are gay and helping them to understand that it is totally okay?
I will take that question because, well, I have a lot of college speaking engagements, and I do a lot of questions and answer sessions like this one. They're all lovely, but I have 2 rules for questions. 1, it really is a question, and 2, a question with an answer. That is a question without an answer. Because if there was a blueprint for young people to come out and tell their family and friends that they are gay, that would be so much easier, right? But every family instance is completely different based on where they live, their family's experiences, their religion, their race even. It's a totally unique experience to everyone who comes out. So there's just no way for anyone really to have a blueprint to come out. The one thing I would say about that is don't do it until you're ready. Don't do it, don't feel pressured to do it. Because if you can't explain it and defend it and be it, then you can't expect the people you tell to do that either. If you're expressing them fear and shame, that's exactly what you're going to get back. Based on the stories I have heard, that you just don't do it until you're ready to do it and be it. And I have heard, I can't even tell you how many coming out stories of a million varieties I've heard over the last 20 years. Some absolutely crushing and some glorious. Actually, I'm going to share 2 of them with you right now. The first one is crushing. There was a young man who was my campus guide at a small school in Michigan. First off, it's Michigan. He told me that he wanted to tell his mom he was gay, and he'd been working at it, but she would always leave the room. So one day they're in the car together. He decides he's going to tell her that he's gay. She can't leave. She can't change the subject. She stops the car, opens the door, kicks him out, and he hadn't seen her since. Okay, he is a graduate student at University in Michigan now. He hadn't seen her since. Now, this was about 10 years ago, so I don't know what their relationship is now, but to me, that was crushing. To him, that was typical. That was the majority of the stories he heard from his friends then. A few years ago, I had the great pleasure to work with a young man from Ohio University, the Ohio University. How pretentious is that? Ohio State, sorry, Cynthia. Anyway, he was lovely. He was out and big man on campus, student government, president of one of the LGBT organizations on campus, but he hadn't come out to his parents yet. So one weekend, as a sophomore, he decides he's going to drive home and tell his folks he's gay. So he drives home, pulls up into the driveway, gets out of the car, leaves it running. I know, right? Goes into the house, he says his mom is knitting or something on the sofa. His dad is downstairs in the man cave doing whatever he does down there. And he comes, he says, Mom, there's something I have to tell you. And she said, well, what is that? And he said, I am gay. And she looks up at him, and then she looks down at the stairway, and she yells, Bob, I win the bet. I love that story. I love that story because it tells how far we have come. It tells how far we have come. There are still issues like the young man in Michigan, but there are far more issues, well, I don't know about the bet part, but far more issues like the one in Ohio. So we have made progress. So thank you for your question, but I don't have an answer to your question. Next question? Yes.
Hi. So I am a sister to an out and proud young man, but he grew up in Wyoming, and when he initially came out, it was really hard not for my mom, but for my dad, who had come from a primarily conservative background, to come to terms with it. So it was like really tense at home for his senior year, because that's when he came out. And I was just wondering how close a relationship you had with Matt before he came out, and if it was something that you were able to work through together, because it sounds like you two were very accepting, and that, I mean, obviously you're out doing good in the community and spreading awareness, but I'm curious.
Sure. I'll start. There's a little story I tell in my book. Matt called me in Saudi in the middle of the night. He was a freshman in college in North Carolina. He called me in the middle of the night, and which Matt always did because time zone math for Matt was no. And he said, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. And I said, Matt, what would that be? And he said, I am gay. And I said, what took you so long to tell me? I had many gay friends in college. So actually, I had thought that Matt was gay from about the time he was 8. Now, don't ask me how I knew that. It was just mother's instinct, maybe. I don't know. My friends say perhaps it was because his favorite Halloween costume for 3 years in a row was Dolly Parton. Not sure. No, I'm playing with you here. So he said, I don't understand. How did you know before I knew? And I said, they tell me it's a mom thing. I truly believe everyone we know and love and care about, we know. We know. Whether or not we want to bring it forward and make it real, that's a different process, but we know. I don't know how we know, but we know. In this phone conversation, he asked me to please not tell Dennis. He wanted to do that himself in person. Everybody else got in person. I got the phone call. Anyway, I agreed to not tell Dennis, but I told him anyway.
Because mothers lie.
That is not why. I told him because Dennis has a tendency to say things before he thinks about them. And I didn't want him to say something that would hurt Matt that he couldn't take back. So when I told Dennis that Matt was gay, he said, no, Matt's not gay. He just hasn't met the right girl yet. I was like, okay, this is the answer I was expecting. And I didn't want him to give that answer to Matt. So I said, no, this really isn't about Matt finding the right girl. This is about Matt finding the right man. And he looked at me for a minute, and then he said, okay, I get that. It might take me a minute to get used to the idea, but I get that. So I don't want you to think that anybody in our family, including Matt's brother, or anybody in family or friends to our knowledge, rejected Matt once he came out. Now, perhaps everybody already knew. I would say that probably is not a stretch. It was Matt. But he was not rejected, to my knowledge, by anyone he already knew. Now, to be fair, he was murdered just shortly after that. So he didn't really have time to tell, all our family. They found out in the newspapers. So, but to our knowledge, he was not rejected. We were accepting. Matt was our son. It was like, he's gay. It's not really all of Matt. It's just who he is. So yeah, that just was never a thing for us. And Dennis will tell the rest of the story.
I understand quite clearly the question that you're asking. We were at a family reunion in Minneapolis with Judy's family, and Matt came up to me and said during the reunion, "Hey, Dad, I need to have a private talk with you. It's something really serious." And I thought, oh, okay. We'll do it when everybody goes to bed. So everybody goes to bed, and Matt takes me into the kitchen, asks me to sit down. Now, before I go any further, after Judy had told me about Matt, as I said, I grew up in a wild and woolly family of construction workers, oil field workers, farmers, drank hard, live hard, work hard, and play hard. So I understand what you're talking about. It's that macho image. And I wanted to have grandkids because I wanted to do the same thing for my grandkids that my father did for Matt and Logan. He taught them how to ride horses. He raised horses. He taught them how to hunt and fish and camp and love the great outdoors. And I want to do the same thing. And then I realized, I thought, well, how selfish am I? First of all, I still have my son. I can still make memories. Look at all the families who've lost a child through accidents, illness, military service, whatever it might be. I can still do things with Matt. Matt is going to be around. I can still have grandkids. And most of all, if he gets married, I can have 2 bachelor parties. Now, from the time Matt was in the 5th grade, he started working in Casper, backstage and on stage as an actor. And he had some very heavy, serious parts. And if you don't think actors are athletes, you've never seen the work they put in. So, to get back to the story, Matt sits me down, and then he goes, "Dad, I'm gay." And I looked at my watch and said, "You know, it's really late and I'm tired. What's so serious you want to talk about?" And you saw him go, huh. Because again, he had this active imagination, and being in theater, he knew he was going to be yelled at, screamed at, thrown out through the screen door, and next thing he'd be in a blizzard with his shopping cart going down the street. Isn't going to happen. He's my son. Whatever he wants to do, whatever he wants to become, we are there for him, just we are for his brother, to support, to encourage, to love, and to back him 100%. Now, with the conservative male population in states like this, the macho population, I hunt, I fish, I camp, I've been in all kinds of fights. Some people say, well, you're kind of a man's man. Well, a man's man who is somebody who does these things or doesn't do them. But it doesn't matter. You love your children, you hug them in public, and you tell them you love them in public, and you're willing to cry in public. that's how you show love for your kids and for the rest of your family. And I'm not ashamed to do it, even up here on stage. And it's something that I wish more fathers would get out like me and start talking about issues and supporting their kids and being there for them like this, to let them know, regardless, I love you. Thank you.
We'll do another question and then we'll call it good.
Hi, my name's Toriana. I work as
two
an...
more questions.
Oh.
Where are we? Corey, where are you?
Over here.
Okay.
Hi. I work as an academic learning specialist for the university's athletics department, and I'm also now the coach for the University of Wyoming Fencing Club. And my question to you, because I am now an out transgender woman, is how do you inspire change and push for equal rights in a smaller setting, such as a workplace or on a sports team? What advice would you have for me to be able to advocate for those equal rights and for better treatment of the LGBT community in a smaller setting, not just on a larger political scale?
Right, that's a really tough question because you're dealing with it every day on a face-to-face basis. That is really hard. And again, I wish I had the perfect answer for you. But in my experience in dealing with, or not dealing, but talking to other folks with the same kind of situation, they have felt the most important thing that they can be is themselves always. To not try to make it easier for the people around you, but to make them uncomfortable and ask questions, because it's the only way they learn. Now that has been that experience. I have not experienced that personally myself, but other folks I've talked to in a similar situation as you, their strongest message was, if I ever came and would back down on something or would try to let someone talk me into a different position, I completely lost my credibility. And they also brought in friends with the same message to share. But all of them, 201, said the most important thing was to just always be myself and to make myself happy, because that made me and more able to be me for them. That's been what I have heard. Now, there may be other people in this room with a better answer for you than I have, but I really appreciate the question, and I hope now that if someone has experience in those lines that you would find Corey and share that with him. Her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, one more question and then we'll be good. Okay, two more questions.
Do you have any advice for educators and future educators on how to promote a culture of diversity and activism within the classroom or in educational settings in high school or college or even for young children?
No. I don't. Other than the religion question, that is the hardest question. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, now. So when we first started the foundation, we thought, we're going to go to schools and we're going to do bullying program, anti-bullying programs, and we're just going to make it, it's going to be great. No, it isn't. For one thing, even if a state adopts an anti-bullying program, every district and every building in that district and every set of parents in all those buildings and all those districts are going to have a different idea about how you're going to do that. Now, they're all about anti-bullying for everybody but those gay kids, because they don't have any. So why should we talk about it? Why should we introduce our kids into the gay thing when there aren't any in that school? We encountered that 100% of the time. So no, I don't know how to do that. I know that there are teaching materials out there, but I also know that you could get into a great deal of trouble for doing it. Teaching Tolerance has a magnificent program that's free for educators. And there are many more. Literature, middle school kids in California are doing the Laramie Project as a reading project. So, you know, there are ways to do it, but I will just tell you that depending on where you are, you could just get into so much trouble, particularly in a state where you can still be fired for being gay. Because any kind of attention you might pay to the gay kids could call you into question. Now, I don't want to sound like horribly pessimistic, like this will never be fixed, because it will, but I just want all of you to be aware that of the really bad part of this, because it is really a bad part of this, and you read about it all the time. So just be really conscious of your building and of your parents and how far you can go. I wish it was easy just to talk about it. You can't even talk about the gay community in terms of history. So, you know, how are we going to do it in terms of the current world? This is a conundrum, but a desperately needed change. I just don't know how. Now, I will say that the current Secretary of Education is not going to be any help to you in this area. And I will also tell you that Arnie Duncan was amazing, the previous Secretary of Education. So much depends on role models that we see nationwide on how we affect education no matter where we are. I did a White House bullying conference in Arlington, Texas. Arlington is between Dallas and Fort Worth, with Valerie Jarrett and Eric Holder. Okay, we did workshop sessions that afternoon, and there was a teacher in tears. I had to pay my own substitute. I had to take the day off. My principal asked me, is this really worth it, going to an anti-bullying? White House conference, anti-bullying? She's like, I am getting no support from my administration whatsoever. So what kind of incentive does she have to move forward other than trying to protect her kids? And if your administrators aren't setting an example, thank you, Dr. Nichols, then you're gonna run into roadblocks that you can't even imagine. So please, all of you, just be aware. Do I want you to do it? Hell yes, I want you to do it. But please be aware of the consequences, because they're out there. They are out there. So short answer to your question, no. Sorry. One more question. Okay. I don't know where the mic is, but okay.
Thank you for being here today. My name is Reverend Ziegler, and I just want to announce, and probably you've all heard, that we have a new chapter of PFLAG here in Laramie. And for those of you who don't know what PFLAG is, it's Parents and Friends of Gays and Lesbians and gays, whatever, and other people too, just a short name. And here is the man here, Reverend, my friend, I'm blanking on your name of some, so Ken Ingram, who also put that together. So, and we have a meeting about 6:30 over down in room 106 of this building, right? In the Rainbow Resource Center.
Okay, great.
I do have a question, though. Forgive me, but I don't know the history of the two young people who killed your son, murdered your son. I'm wondering if you might share a little bit of your feelings as that situation occurred and you had to go to the trials, and then have you changed your mind or how you're feeling about things today, particularly around those two men, and have they changed? I'm ashamed to say that I don't know.
I'm happy to share that with you. I'll share you my version, and then Dennis can share his. The two young men were locals, one of them in trouble all the time, and the other an Eagle Scout who somehow lost his way. He self-identified as a follower who, for some reason, identified with the other young man and they both had not perfect home lives. Russell's mother was not in his life, or his father. He was raised by his. These are things only I know. Y'all might know a different story, but this is the one I know, or am told. He was raised by his grandmother, well respected in town. Somehow he just got lost somewhere. The other one, his mom died when he was 12 or 13, from a surgical error. So they both grew up without moms in their lives, and even though Russell had a heavy paternal influence. They were in the drug scene, high school dropouts. They, in their own statements, told the story about how they befriended Matt and because he was gay and yada yada. All this is just really public information if you're really interested. They were both sentenced to consecutive 2 life sentences. They will be in prison forever. The only way they would ever get out was if a future governor of Wyoming were to commute one of the sentences. They would then procedurally be eligible for parole for the second, procedurally. I don't really see that happening in our lifetime. It may happen eventually. They were the same age as Matt, 21, so they've already been in prison for 20 years. The first one was sentenced, he pled guilty, so he was just had a sentencing hearing. The second one actually had a trial, and he was found guilty and was therefore made eligible for the death penalty based on Wyoming statute. We knew the jury would come back. It was up to the jury to decide. We knew the jury would come back with the death sentence recommendation. The defense attorneys approached the prosecuting attorney, the chief investigating officers, and us, saying that he would accept the same sentencing as the first young man and would never appeal if we took the death penalty off the table. I just wanted it over with. I never wanted to see him again. I didn't want our younger son to have to deal with this in his lifetime. I just wanted it to go away. So that sounded like the perfect ending for me. He just would disappear. Because if we had refused their offer and he'd gone through with the death penalty, there would have been mandatory appeals over and over and over. There would have been media attention, courtroom appearances, the outlying possibility of maybe a procedural error somewhere where he would get off. The worst nightmare ever, in my view. So I just wanted it over with. So I very strongly agreed that this was the path we should take. Dennis, not so much. There was a lot of discussion. Do you want to tell the rest of the story, or should I?
Go ahead. If I do, I use nasty
Okay.
language.
So, and really, I was really the only one that wanted to do this, because everybody else was so caught up in the horror of what they had done that they felt that he needed to go through to the end. But really, that wasn't going to be the end, was it? No, it wasn't. So my uppermost concern was Logan, our younger son, having to deal with this forever. So we talked. We all came to sort of an agreement that, yes, in the end, this was the best thing. Taking another person's son is not going to bring ours back. But I want you all to be aware that the 4 of us, Dennis and I and Matt and Logan, had the death penalty question discussion after the murder of James Byrd Jr. And all of us felt that in some cases where there is no question of guilt, the death penalty is the way you should go. Because of the men who murdered James Byrd Jr., all they would have done their entire life in prison was teach hate and recruit for white supremacy. They didn't deserve that opportunity. So the 4 of us had that discussion. It's not that we were opposed to the death penalty. And even pre-trial, we had the discussion from the prosecuting attorney, if you're going to fight us on this, we're not even going to go for it. It's like, this is really not our decision. It's your decision. You have to follow the law. We're not, this is not about us. So we just went through to the end, and in the end, the decision for 2 consecutive life sentences, no appeal, won out, and they are both currently serving 2 consecutive life sentences. They will never be out. Is that enough of an answer? Oh, feel different. You know, I get asked that question, do you forgive them? Do you hate them? It's like, me personally, I never blamed them 100% because the social environment in the late 90s was televangelism, telling everybody, I'll get rid of those gays. I'll send them to an island and build a wall, and you'll never see them again. Send me money. Well, everybody hated the gays. There was no common enemy then. Governor Richards from Texas, when she retired, she said, we need a common enemy. Well, we didn't have one anymore, so it became the gay community. Everybody focused on the gay community. So that was the atmosphere that was existing then, was that the gays were totally unworthy of existing. And I'm sure their thought process was, who's going to miss another fag? Who's going to care? He's just dirt, not worthy of our time. Well, they were wrong. He had many people who loved and cared about him, us. We were going to fight for him and everybody else. Whew. So, because it became such a huge news article, I don't think anyone, I don't think they at all expected this kind of hell to rain down on them. And I'm pretty sure one of them is still very proud of what he did. How do I feel about them? They just don't exist anymore. I don't hate them. I don't feel like forgiveness is part of my process because I never really blamed them. They're just gone. I cannot espouse learning from this incident if all I can do is talk about how much I hate them. Because I don't hate them. They were total screw-ups, and they took my son, yes, but hating them isn't going to bring him back. I want this to stop happening, and I can't tell that story if it comes from a place of hate. It is coming from a place of anger, make no mistake, but it is not coming from a place of hate. They just don't exist anymore. They just don't. And they've never asked for forgiveness. So I might rethink if they did, but they haven't. So
They won't, and I don't care. I'm going to use the nasty language. I want to fry the bastards, even to this day. I will always feel that way, and I don't care what anybody thinks about it. Put me in there, let me have that switch. I'll bring it down slowly till the head starts to smoke, and then I'll stop for a while. And then I'll do it again. I don't care. They took my son away, and they had no right to do it. He could have contributed to this world, and he didn't get the opportunity because he was different. I wanted to fry him, and Judy wouldn't let me, and she was smart. Well, aren't the wives always the smarter one? Again, because we didn't have to worry about a technicality getting him off. We didn't have to worry about Logan having to go through it. We didn't have to worry about him dying, becoming a martyr, and other copycats doing the same thing. So she convinced me, and she was right. They're in that hellhole, and they'll stay there. And every day, they get to think about Matt. Every day. And I love it. So I'm still getting my revenge, just a little bit slower than what I'd like. So it's something to think about, and you don't realize the ripple effect, because not only did it impact us, it impacted our family and everybody who knew Matt, but it also impacted both Henderson's and McKinley's families and friends. So this was a ripple effect that went out through the entire country as to the impact that it had everywhere. So anything that is done has a ripple effect, and you need to understand that. And that's why we keep harping on you to become the new activists and work for the best of this country. One more.
I just want to add that also we were hyper aware of what everybody else in the country was doing and thinking and writing. There were protesters in front of the courthouse, hang 'em. They were in favor of the death penalty. There was a float outside the courthouse with a noose. And then we had the nun, whose name I just forgot, who wrote to us and said, please don't pursue the death penalty. It was, you know, these are the kind of decisions you think you're going to make on your own, right? Not in front of millions of people, but we were hyper aware. We did also not want to send the message that another act of violence was going to fix anything. So, thank you for your question, and I think we're good. One more. Okay, one more question.
So we're going to do one more question, and then we're just going to ask you guys to stay on stage for a few minutes, and we want to
Okay.
thank you properly.
Thank you for being here. When you came before Judy and spoke before us, you said something I'll never forget. When asked about the tragedy, you simply said, "Matt was my son." And I hope we could end with a sense of how can we celebrate our common humanity? Gays and Muslims in this community especially, and sometimes people who finish their prison sentences, and you know other reasons for prejudice, but could you go back to that point of all of us have a common humanity, and when you come and can be with us in that, we are changed. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We have always felt that the most important thing here is that Matt, through the miracle or the horror of media, became somebody we didn't begin to recognize. And we felt, Matt's friends and family, that this was really not who Matt was, and he would have been very upset if people thought that's who he was, some unattainable something. Matt had issues, there was no question, and I just felt like, and when I wrote the book, I felt like everybody had to know who Matt was. First and foremost, Matt was a human being who didn't deserve this. No one that this happened to deserves this. No one deserves to be fired from their job because of who they are. No one deserves to be treated differently because of the way they look or the way they worship or the way they love. This really is about humanity. At the core, we are all the same. And on that note, we would just like to thank you all for coming. Again, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Nichols, and thank you to the Symposium, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so very much. And so I just wanted to say that I found out that Judy and Dennis were going to be speaking at this Shepherd Symposium in, I think it was about December. And Michelle and Christy and I talked about it a little bit, and we wanted to do something special, particularly given the fact that we're at 20 years of the horrible incident. And so then in January, we had our student juried exhibition of student artwork. And it's really one of my favorite things. I love going to it. The opening night, we give awards out. Student work is available for sale. And as Tim and I were walking around that evening looking at it, we saw this particular piece of student artwork, and it just really spoke to me. It's a vase, and it was entitled Paintbrush, and it was done by our own student, Naomi Peterson. And it was inspired by the Wyoming landscape. And as I looked at it, I just thought, oh, that would be perfect for Judy and Dennis. And so we purchased it. And this is Naomi, the artist, and she's going to give it to them tonight. And Judy and Dennis, thank you again for being here. Thank you for keeping the University of Wyoming in your hearts, and thank you for coming back and just being one of us. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight.